We've all heard about the need to address emissions from heavy industries. And really the only solution that we have there is carbon capture, use or storage. But what do we do once we've captured that carbon? Well, we're here today at MCi Carbon, a company that's groundbreaking technology is not only capturing carbon, but is finding really interesting use pathways for those carbon materials. Come with us to explore their facilities and have a conversation with their Chief Technology Officer, Mark, to understand better how these materials could change the world. So Mark, I've been told that really what your system does is it accelerates a natural process. Can you talk us through how carbon capture might occur in nature and what you're doing to accelerate that?
Yeah, so what I have here is a magnesium silicate rock, and in nature that's reacting with carbon dioxide dissolved in rainwater, and that process takes millions and millions of years. What MCi has developed is a technology that speeds up that natural process so that it can be happening in tens of minutes and makes it useful industrially.
Incredible. So where does the process start?
So the process starts where we have a feedstock source that contains magnesium and calcium. We crush and grind that rock to make a powder, and that increases the reaction rate with CO2. We combine that powder with CO2 and we produce a carbonate product, which is a white powder material there.
Yeah, amazing.
That can contain up to 50% CO2 in solid form. And we also produce this amorphous silicate product, which we can use to make low carbon concrete.
This is the one I'm really excited about because it has huge potential in the concrete sector to help us to decarbonise. So the Myrtle facility is a demonstration plant, and we can see here, obviously, we're on site with Orica at their ammonia facility. Are you directly capturing the flue gas from this heavy industry? Do you see that being the future of MCi facilities?
We'll certainly do that in the future. Orica's facility naturally concentrates the CO2 as part of their existing process. So we tap directly off that concentrated CO2 stream, but we can blend that CO2 with other gases to make a simulated flue gas that we can test here on the plant.
Brilliant.
The Myrtle facility can process up to 3,000 tonnes of CO2 per year. And the aim of this facility is to showcase the technology to our customers. So rather than needing to do pilot plants at each of our customers' site, we've made this investment in the technology where we can bring the feedstock materials from our customers, test it in our plant here, gain data on the performance of the process, and also importantly produce large volumes of products that we can use to test the performance of the materials.
So we're here now at the MCi office in Newcastle, which is on the lands of the Awabakal people. And I'm here with Mark Rayson, who's the Chief Technology Officer at MCi. Thanks so much for having us today, Mark.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for making the trip to Newcastle to visit us.
Yeah, well, it's exciting work that you're doing and we're really excited to share it. So obviously, globally, we have big issues in terms of achieving a net zero economy for the world. And one of the major challenges that we have to face is this idea of carbon capture. And many of the pathways that we're looking at the moment are focusing on carbon capture and then storage of that material. But MCi is taking a different approach, right? Can you tell us about how you fit into that broader decarbonisation agenda?
Yeah, so MCi is developing technology to help abate CO2 from hard-to-abate industries like steel, cement and chemicals. And our approach treats CO2 as a resource where we convert CO2 into useful products for construction.
It seems like this is a huge solution when it comes to our decarbonisation agenda. In cement and concrete, we have a roadmap that recognises that about 31% of the effort is going to need to be in this carbon capture space. But I guess the technology hasn't necessarily evolved to a level where it's commercially viable to deliver that. Do you see ultimately that MCi could plug into some of the cement facilities in Australia to capture those emissions?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the aim for where we'd like to be in the future. And we actually play potentially two roles within the cement decarbonisation roadmap. Not only can we capture the CO2 for carbon capture utilisation and storage, but we're also producing low carbon embodied products that we hope to use in concrete to reduce the amount of cement that's required and have like a double whammy in terms of CO2 reduction, both removing CO2, but also reducing the amount of clinker that's required to make cement and concrete.
Which is so exciting. And I think on a chemical level, it's the perfect embodiment of the circular economy because, you're capturing those carbon emissions, but then turning them into a usable product that we can push back into the supply chain. So let's get to the exciting part. Let's talk about how you're actually using those materials. So off the back of your carbon capture process, you've got carbonate and silicate materials that are then the result of that process. Obviously, we're doing some work at SmartCrete CRC to look at how those could be applied in a concrete product. But tell me a little bit about that. Where can these materials be used? What are we finding when it comes to applications in, say, a concrete product?
Yeah, so we're typically starting with a mineral that's a magnesium silicate, and that produces two products, magnesium carbonate and an amorphous silicate product. And it's the amorphous silicate product that we're researching in collaboration with the CRC. So the amorphous silicate we're intending to use as a supplementary cementitious material. The silicate is quite reactive and it can react in concrete with components of cement to generate additional strength, and that allows us to hopefully reduce the amount of cement that's required to achieve concrete of a given performance.
Fantastic. So not only are you using a captured carbon material, which means that we're addressing heavy industry emissions, but we're also potentially bringing down the carbon rating of the concrete itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's really exciting. So tell me a little bit about the results that we're seeing in the research that we're doing.
Yeah, so the research that we're doing is aiming to provide the technical basis for using our silicate material in concrete. So we've started in the lab and we've, through the CRC program, scaled that up in a systematic way to the point where we've been able to make bulk concrete in concrete trucks. And so some of the work that we've been doing has been looking at the both the fresh and hardened properties of the concrete that we produce in the lab and understanding how the silicate material interacts in the concrete, some of the mechanisms that are working, and making sure that we hit all of the key performance requirements for that concrete to be used effectively.
And how are we going in terms of those performance requirements?
Really good. We had some challenges with the workability, in particular with the slump retention. But what's been really good with the CRC is we've been able to take the results from the lab, feed those back into our manufacturing process and make some small changes to the way that we produce the product to enhance the overall performance. So with those changes, we've been able to successfully scale up and achieve acceptable properties at low substitution rates.
Really, ultimately, that is such a great example of industry research collaboration working at its best when you can create those feedback loops, create an agile working environment and continuously improve the product. It seems to me like MCi Carbon is a company that has actually founded itself on technical innovation. From what I understand, many of the founders of the organisation, yourself included, have come from that research environment, that technical background. How important would you say is it to have a good relationship with a university or a research provider to help provide that commercial technical innovation?
Yeah, for us, it's been critically important to our success. At the university academic environment, have access to both world-class equipment and facilities that we don't have access to as a small company ourselves. And they've also got a wealth of expertise because they're working on a range of similar materials, and we're able to, benefit from the knowledge and experience that the researchers have and apply that to our new materials. So we've found the partnership to be really beneficial.
Yeah, fantastic. Can you tell me what it looks like in practice working alongside a university?
Yeah, so we've been really actively involved in the project. So, we found that it's been really effective to interact really closely with the researchers. So we co-developed the research plans with the university to make sure that the outcomes of the work are meeting our needs. And I think they've also found that quite beneficial with that high level of engagement, that they can see that the work that they're doing is really having an impact on the success at MCi. So we develop the plans with the team, and then we have weekly check-ins to track the progress. Our teams, we really try and work as one integrated team as opposed to separate organisations. So try to maximise the collaboration as much as we can.
And what an incredible environment as well for, say, the students that are working on those projects to get direct industry experience and see the fruit of their labour creating real value in the world.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and we've actually employed one of the PhD students in a part-time role. They've really enjoyed what they've been doing, and we've been thrilled to have them be able to contribute as part of the CRC project, but now as a direct employee of MCi as well.
Oh, such a great story of success. I love it. So if we turn back then to the real problem that we're trying to address globally, it's huge. The amount of carbon that's being released into the atmosphere, this is a really big problem for us. And when we're talking about heavy industries or hard to abate industries, so many of those emissions are things that we can't naturally abate as part of the process. So really something like an MCi Carbon solution is critical to our journey towards decarbonisation. What are you finding in terms of that global engagement and the work that MCi is doing? Are you getting a lot of good reception from the rest of the world about this work?
Yes, we've got interest from customers and investors from all around the world in our technology. So it's really exciting. It's a really exciting space to be working in. We're really fortunate to have amazing facilities here at our pilot plant and the demonstration plant at Myrtle, where we're able to test samples from customers from all around the world. And typically what we're doing is receiving samples of prospective feedstock materials, analysing those in our lab to determine how much CO2 we can store, and to generate product samples that we can send back to them to test, to determine the value of those products in the customer's applications.
Fantastic. And off the back of that, lots of interest?
Yeah, there's lots of interest. So what really sets MCi's solution apart is that we're converting CO2 into a useful material. So unlike storing CO2 underground, which costs a lot of money but doesn't add a lot of value, we're turning CO2 into a product that we can sell. So the economics of our solution are quite different to some of the alternatives, where we can actually generate a positive return on investment and achieve really good decarbonisation outcomes at the same time. So that's really like a unique value proposition that MCi's got, and that's driving a lot of interest both in Australia and around the world.
Which is great because it comes at a time when we have potentially these two competing priorities. Obviously, decarbonisation and net zero is something that globally we're focusing on, with fantastic programs like the Paris Agreement really driving countries to work together to create contributions towards those targets. But at the same time, we have huge pressures in many countries around infrastructure needs. Obviously here in Australia, we're facing a housing shortage. And similarly, when we're thinking about projecting to a larger population over the next few years, we're going to need more infrastructure, which means we need more reliable access to those building materials to create that infrastructure. So you're potentially creating the materials pipeline of the future.
Absolutely. Like our vision is that, as the world, urbanizes and we have that growth in infrastructure, that we can be building that infrastructure with low carbon embodied products, getting carbon dioxide that would otherwise be going into the atmosphere and putting that into the built environment where it's safely stored, but also generating, the infrastructure that we need for a productive future society. So obviously, like working on a grant or in a CRC with lots of different stakeholders, there's administration and reporting requirements that many people view as being bureaucratic and cumbersome. I don't know, you can cut that bit. But what we've found is it's actually been really useful to coordinate all of the stakeholders and to keep people on track. What we've found is the CRC has been really flexible to adapt the program in response to the changing needs of the project, which have evolved a bit over time. So overall, we've found the support of the CRC really useful for keeping all of the stakeholders coordinated and focused on the end goal.
That's great to hear, because that's a real driving priority for us, is coordinating complex working teams. So your project in particular, your university is UTS, University of Technology, Sydney. And I think what's interesting about this project is that we've actually also brought in an end user of that concrete product as well in Transport for New South Wales. So we've got 3 companies working together to solve a major challenge. How do you get that collaboration to work effectively?
I think we've had a lot of consultation, and it was really valuable to get the input from Transport for New South Wales early in the project. What we didn't want to be doing was, work that was isolated in the lab that wasn't connected to the end user. So we've consulted with them when developing the research program to make sure that the outcomes that we deliver are aligned with what the end user needs. So, the input from Transport for New South Wales has been incredibly valuable. They're also part of our project steering committee, so they get to review the results that we're generating in the lab and provide us with feedback on aspects that they'd like to explore further, and to make sure that we're on track to deliver something that meets their needs at the end of the day.
So really what we're doing here is we're delivering a very applied research project because we're already thinking about those pathways to get these materials into industry.
Yeah, our goal here is really to commercialise the technology. So we've developed the concept and done the fundamental research already, and it's really about translating that research to achieve practical real-world outcomes.
What have your experiences been like with UTS as a university? How do you think their facilities are helping to deliver really high-quality research?
I think the facilities at UTS are really world-class. They've got everything that we need to deliver the program, from the scientific measurement side of things to the practical side of making concrete, both concrete in the lab, but also some scaled up mixes that have been a real crucial step in scaling up the program. Another benefit with working with UTS is that they've been very responsive to the industry needs. So from our perspective, maintaining that practical focus and flexibility to adjust the research program in response to new findings or the direction that MCi needs the project to take has been really fantastic. So from an industry perspective, having worked with a number of different universities, we've found the relationship to be really productive.
I think that is really great to hear, and it is the dream of any CRC that we can get these really fantastic research industry collaborations working. Australian universities have such phenomenal research facilities, and in many ways they're facilities that businesses potentially can't build themselves, or it wouldn't be economical to build themselves. So to hear that you guys are leveraging those facilities at UTS is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been really fortunate.
The challenge that we have in carbon capture is immense. From some aspects, the estimate is that cement in particular could be worth 6 to 8% of global emissions. In fact, I think there's some reports that suggest that if you classified it as a country, it would be the 4th largest country in the world in terms of emissions. So we have a big challenge to tackle. When you're talking about the volumes that you guys can do at the moment, it's still relatively small in terms of the size of the problem. Do you have thoughts about how we scale this to address what is a really big, meaty challenge for the world?
Yeah, so we think at a high level, there's the potential for CCU to be capturing up to 1 billion tonnes of CO2 per year, and we hope for MCi to be taking a significant share of that at some point in the future. The reality is that the decarbonisation is a huge challenge, and we need a whole range of different technologies in order to reach net zero. And we think that CCU and MCi's mineralisation technology will play an important role in getting to that end goal.
Do you think that there are any challenges from a commercialisation perspective in terms of then using those materials that you're bringing to the market?
It is a challenge because they are new materials that we're bringing to the market. In Australia, we have an Australian standard around manufactured pozzolans, which would be applicable to MCi's materials. But that standards framework is still evolving. The standard for pozzolans isn't currently incorporated into the standards for concrete, for example. I think that's underway, but that's just one example of some of the developments that we need to go in parallel with the regulatory pathways to commercialise our materials. So there are some challenges with introducing new materials, but we're not alone. As we talked about before, a significant part of the roadmap for decarbonising the cement and concrete industry is substituting cement with supplementary cementitious materials. So we see getting increased support and appetite for new products.
And how do you think that the built environment market is responding to this challenge? Obviously you're working with Transport for New South Wales, which is great, but are you seeing others as part of that community that are really starting to ask for these products?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of interest from concrete producers and infrastructure providers who are seeing an increased focus of, from their clients to hit decarbonisation targets. So there's really a high focus on the embodied carbon of concrete that's going into infrastructure projects, and that's increasingly becoming, a requirement in order for companies to do business.
So obviously you guys are really driving this innovation and putting these new products out there, which is phenomenal. But is there something that someone else needs to do? If you were to look at government or the market, are there things that need to change in order to streamline and accelerate your pathway to market?
I think anything that can encourage the use of low carbon materials in construction is beneficial. If there was, governments, specifying minimum amounts of, circular economy materials, or having targets for the CO2 embodiment of concrete, that would help to, drive the adoption of our technology.
They're a huge part of the market. So yeah, if they're demanding those products, then they're really setting a market environment where we need to supply them. Yeah,
and I think that would send a signal to the rest of the market, and provide an opportunity for us to showcase that these materials perform the same as existing materials, but have a lower carbon impact. So our end goal is that concrete performs equally well as standard concrete, but with a significantly reduced environmental footprint.
So how long until those of us who live in New South Wales are driving over MCi concrete roads?
Yeah, well, we'll be producing thousands of tonnes of product from our Myrtle facility, and we'll be hoping to roll that out with large-scale trials over the next 2 to 3 years. So, it's quite possible that you'll be driving over concrete with MCi products in the not too distant future.
Can't wait. So tell me, what's next? Where is MCi going in the next 5 to 10 years?
So at the moment, we've just commissioned our Myrtle facility in Newcastle, which is storing 1,000 to 3,000 tonnes per annum of CO2. So we're aiming to prove the technology at scale, and that proves to our customers that the technology works, and it gives them large volumes of product that they can test and validate in their applications. So we see this as a springboard for deploying the technology elsewhere. It'll give our customers the confidence to move forward with investing in decarbonisation plants which are located at their facilities. So our vision is that in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll have multiple MCi plants all around the world, capturing CO2 and producing low carbon embodied products going into concrete.
Incredible. And what an amazing example of Australia leading the world in decarbonisation technologies. Can I say thank you so much, obviously, for having us here today, but also for your partnership in the SmartCrete program. This project really exemplifies industry research collaboration at its best. And not only that, it has real world application to potentially change the way we capture and use carbon into the future. So thank you so much for your work. Thanks for your time today. I'm sure our listeners will really enjoy hearing all about this project.
Okay, thanks a lot, Claire.